Are you on a perilous path as a pastor? That's a little bit of a tongue twister. And it's not a great question that we want to ask, but it's a question that we absolutely need to be asking as pastors and ministry leaders. Is the path you're on a perilous one? Where is it going to lead? So often in ministry, we get so caught up in looking at our day to day, looking at the things that are right in front of us, looking at the absolute needs for today, that we don't always take time to look up, to lift our heads and to look over the horizon and ask the question, the path that I'm on, where is it taking me? Not where is it taking the church, not where is it taking my ministry, where is it taking me? And what we're going to do today is we're going to look at three perilous paths that pastors are on. We're going to ask the questions, are we on these paths ourselves? And what are we going to do about it? So let's get started. So the big question is this: how do pastors like us who remain focused on the mission of Jesus and serving our communities without being distracted by everything in the world around us, how do we increase our effectiveness while living a lifestyle that doesn't compromise our health, our families, or our personal relationships with Jesus? That's the question this podcast is going to answer. I'm Dr. Brandon Party Cooper, and welcome to the Ministry Hackers Podcast. Welcome to this episode of the Ministry Hackers Podcast. I hope you are doing wonderfully wherever it is you are, whatever it is you're doing, however you're listening to this podcast. Maybe you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, or maybe you are listening on your favorite podcast provider, wherever it is. I hope you're doing well, and I hope that you are having a great day. I am super excited. We are just a few days into the doors being open to the Dream Life and Ministry cohort. It's going wonderfully, connecting with pastors and talking with pastors, answering questions. I am so excited to get started, to get past this intro week, this open door week, and get into the point where we are meeting, we are having interviews, we are touching base, we are learning and growing and developing. I'm so excited for that. But if you're not in yet, I want to encourage you to jump into the Dream Life and Ministry cohort. And I'm going to give you a couple reasons why. Number one, it's going to change your life. I know it. I believe it. I guarantee you that it's going to change the way you do ministry. It's going to give you a more satisfying and fulfilling approach to ministry without compromising church growth and ministry growth and outreach and effectiveness. The goal here is to make your personal life better and your ministry life better. So that's the first reason. The second reason is because there's almost no risk at all. Built in is a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if in 30 days you say, you know what, this really isn't for me, I don't really see a lot of value in this, or maybe I don't have time for it, whatever, you let me know and I will refund you every penny that you put in. And so there's really no risk here. And even if you get past the 30 days and you just decide that it's not something you want to do, that's fine. Just cancel, because you won't lose anything more. You'll just you just lose what you paid for the month before, and you can get out at any point. There's very low commitment and very high gain. And so I want to encourage you, if you are at all interested or think maybe you might be interested, go to brandonpartycooper.com/mydreamlife. You can see all the bonuses, all the things that we're throwing in, we're packing in, all of them designed to help you do ministry more effectively, more efficiently, and have a greater impact in your community while at the same time having a more satisfying, more fulfilling, and more peaceful personal life. And so I'm super excited to get started. I hope you check it out. We only have a couple days left for the Founders Price. Founders Price goes away in just a few days. And so I want to remind you to jump in there right now, because once the Founders Price goes away, it goes away forever. We will never open the doors to this cohort again as the first time. And so now's the time to get in. You lock in that price. You can have that price the rest of your life, for a lifetime, as long as you stay in the cohort. So again, check it out. Very low risk, very high opportunity for gain. And so go in there, brandonpartycooper.com/mydreamlife. Check it out. See all the bonuses, all the courses, everything that's built in. And I hope you decide to join and be a part today, because I'm super excited to get started. And I think you will be too once you get in there. Okay. So let's dive into this very challenging topic today. Now, let me just kind of give you an overview of where this is coming from. So I've been reading this book, The Flourishing Pastor by Tom Nelson. Great book. I've loved it. It's been very challenging, very eye-opening. And in the book, he talks about these three perilous paths for pastors. And it's a little bit of a tongue twister. Every time I say it, I'm afraid I'm going to get tripped up on it. But these three perilous paths that all of us as pastors and ministry leaders run the risk of being. Now, I know that we don't like talking about this. We don't like talking about the reality that being in ministry is not an easy path to be on. Being in ministry is not something that we go into with no risk. In fact, we all know going in there's high risk, but we don't like talking about it a lot of times, which is why so many of us serve in ministry in isolation. We serve in ministry carrying heavy burdens that we really shouldn't. We serve in ministry going through challenges over and over and over again, never really seeing hope, never really seeing relief or anything like that. And I think that this conversation that Tom brings to us and this book brings to us is something for us to stop and consider and think about, because it's important that we look ahead, the path that we're on. Where is this taking us? I think about when I was first coming into ministry, actually when I was going into Bible college. I entered Bible college in 97. And so this was just a few years after a lot of the televangelist issues happened. And I'm not going to throw out names, because if you don't know them, then I don't want to throw their name out. And if you do know them, you know who I'm talking about. But in the late 80s, early 90s, there were a handful of very prominent televangelists who got into all kinds of different moral issues. And for the most part, either lost their ministries altogether, or their ministries were heavily impacted in a negative way. And that's kind of the environment that I started coming into ministry in. And as I shared my story a few episodes ago, it was also part of the catalyst where, I felt God calling me to be a part of helping pastors and guide pastors and really safeguard them from some of these challenges and these perilous paths that, that Tom Nelson is talking about. And I think back to those guys. And in fact, there's one that Tom brings out in his book and quotes from, who in prison was looking back, and he says, never at any point was there this realization that the path that he was on was going where it was going. And in fact, in his mind and in his heart, he always felt like he was doing what he was supposed to be doing. He was always doing the things he was doing for the glory of God and for the advancement of his kingdom. And I think that we have to be honest with ourselves, because I know it's easy for us to look at pastors who have moral failures, look at our pastors who burn out, look at other pastors or whatever. And on one hand, we have compassion. I hope we have compassion for them. But it's also easy to look at that and just shake our head and be like, man, what were you thinking? What were you doing? Why'd you make that decision? Why did you let that happen? It's easy for us on this side to do that and to think that and to even out loud say that sometimes. But the reality is are you aware where you are on your path? Are you paying attention to the decisions you're making today and where they're going to go? Because none of those guys, none of those pastors, none of those ministry leaders really understood what they were doing, at least not enough to say, I need this to stop. Now, yes, there's justification, but that's a part of the equation. We start on these paths and we make these decisions. We start walking down and we just make poor decisions along the way that snowball into something that's out of our control. Now, the three paths that I want to talk about and that Tom Nelson brings out in his book, The Flourishing Pastor, they're not paths of immorality. They're not paths of ethical compromise. They're not that at all. And I think that's almost a little bit more dangerous, because the path that a lot of us on, most of us are not going to end up like those pastors did. We're not going to end up in moral failure. We're not going to end up in some legal issues. That's not where most of us are going to end up. Where most of us end up, and the statistics back it up, is that most of us end up in burnout. We end up in depression. We end up losing sight of what we're trying to accomplish, or what God's called us to do in our churches, even to the point where we just fall into apathy, and we're ineffective for the gospel. We're ineffective for our communities, and we're just sitting back trying to coast through without getting hurt, many of us. And I think that that's almost a sadder place to be, because some of these guys who have huge moral failures and left the ministry, some of them have gone through rehab, through deep repentance, have gone through great processes, and have returned to ministry in some ways healthier than they were before. But for those of us who are apathetic, those of us who are just trudging along and trying to make it through and not really asking for help and not really safeguarding ourselves and on a path, these perilous paths that Tom talks about, if we're not careful, we will just stay on those paths and live a life that's ineffective and unfulfilling. And to me, that is almost a greater tragedy because we never really get to see our complete and full calling come to fruition. And so let me just unpack these three perilous paths that Tom Nelson talks about and just share with you kind of what they are and kind of how he breaks them down. The first one is the celebrity pastor. Now, we've all seen this, and however you feel, some of us are very against the celebrity pastors, and some of us are, I wouldn't say for the celebrity style of pastor, but we understand. I know for myself, I've served with pastors who, on some level might be considered celebrity, who are well known, they're authors, and they go around and speak in a lot of places. I've been around these men and women of God. I've served on staff with them, and I'll be honest with you, it's for most of them, it's not what they ever wanted. They never sought it out. They're just good at what they do, and they're just good pastors, and they love people, and they love serving. And it almost their celebrity status comes from us. Comes from us lifting them up. Comes from us wanting to be around them and wanting to dote on them and wanting to praise their name. It comes from us more than it does them seeking it out. Now, I'm not saying some don't. Some probably do seek it out on some subconscious level. But most of them, at least the ones that I've known, they're just serving God and letting God expand their platform, expand their influence, and expand what they're able to do to make a difference in this world. But as pastors, we have to be cautious of this because what you don't realize and don't know, and I know for me, this is something I think I'll never be a celebrity pastor. And I'm sure that's probably on your mind. I will never be a celebrity pastor. And maybe on a national level, that's true, but you might be a celebrity in your own community. The people in your church may be lifting you up and praising your name because of how well you've led them, because of the moments you've had in their lives, the spiritual impact you've had. It's easy for us as pastors to become a celebrity, whether it's at a national level or just at our local level. It's easy for us to become this well-known name that everybody flocks to and loves and lifts us up. We begin to think that we are bigger than we really are. And we begin to think that somehow what we are doing is about us and about our own churches and our own little kingdoms that we're building. And this is a dangerous place to be because we were never called to allow ourselves to become celebrities. What we are supposed to do is point everything back to Jesus, glorify him. And this is challenging on some level because there's a constant balance for us. I know for me, there was a time in my ministry where it was really hard for me to accept a compliment. Somebody would say, "Oh, Brandon, you did really good at this." And I'd be like, "Oh no, it's just Jesus." "Oh no, God did it. And I was just his servant along the way." And there's some truth to that, but there's also a point where, we have to be okay with accepting compliments. But we can't accept compliments to the point where we think that we are immovable, where we are irreplaceable. I think the reality is, and the hard truth that all of us have to face is, we can all be replaced. And quite honestly, one of the jobs that I think all of us should be doing is figuring out how to replace ourselves, raising up others, putting a succession plan in place, making sure that the church is well taken care of if something were to happen to us. When we do that, then we kind of take the celebrity status, we push off to the side and we say, no. This isn't about me. It's about the Jesus that I serve and the calling he's given me. And I'm going to prepare my ministry, my church, my people. I'm going to prepare them for the days when I'm not here because it's not about me. It's about the success and the growth of the disciples in this faith community. We have to find ways to remain humble while still remain effective leaders in our churches and our communities. So that's the celebrity pastor. And the perilous element of that is we begin to believe our own press. We begin to listen to the praises. We begin to think that somehow, some way, God has blessed the people that you serve because he's put you in their lives. Like they're so lucky to have me as their pastor. And we kind of may say that a little tongue in cheek, but on a subconscious level, we think that. We think that, oh, nobody could do this better than me. Oh, nobody could could, replace me. Nobody could lead these people as well as I do. Look at all the things that I've done as a pastor here. It's a dangerous path to be on. I want to caution us that we make sure that we remain humble in our service and that we praise Jesus every step of the way, and that we accept compliments, but we deflect worship and honor and glory that should be sent towards God. So that's the first one. The second one, the visionary pastor. And I'll be honest with you, this one was tough for me because I'm a firm believer that as pastors, we need to have vision. We need to have direction. We need to know where we are taking our congregations, where God is leading us, all of that. And Tom really isn't talking about that necessarily. What Tom's really getting at is this need that we feel as leaders and as pastors, this need to have a vision. We have this vision and we work hard and we get to it and we accomplish it. And then we feel this need to have another vision. And quite honestly, if we're being true to ourselves, most of us have a vision that we never really complete before we have another vision, and then another vision, and then another vision. And before long, we have 5 visions that we've pursued and not accomplished any of them. And our people are exhausted and worn out. And a lot of times what this visionary leader, this visionary pastor mentality can be, it really can be this service to our own egos. This feeling that I have to work to do something great, to accomplish something significant in order to be worthy of the position that God has given me. And then when it's done and everybody applauds and the building is built and the ministry is working and, whatever it is, whatever the vision was, and people are shaking our hands and saying, "Great job, Pastor. Good job. Thank you so much, Pastor. That was great." We feed off of that. We love it. And we feel the need to have another vision right off the back end. But honestly, the vision was given to us a long time ago. Make disciples. Make disciples. That's it. Nothing wrong with advancing our reach and our influence and starting ministries. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that too often we're doing all these other visionary pieces at the expense of making disciples, discipling people in the scriptures and knowing Jesus on a deeper level. Discipleship is the vision. Discipleship is the mission. And everything else is secondary. And as pastors, we need to be the first servant to accomplish the discipleship of others. That's our focus. Now, I get it, and I'm in favor of it. We run churches and organizations. There is a business piece to having a church. If you don't want to have a business piece, then have a small group and a home church, and you will have zero business. But if you want to have a church building and church property, and fall within the legal parameters that a nonprofit does, then there's a business piece that we have to operate in. We have to follow certain rules. We have to lead in a certain way to uphold those rules. And so we have to have an element of leadership when it comes to leading an organization. But it doesn't mean it doesn't mean we're building a business. It doesn't mean we're building this great monolith of industry for the community to see. What we're called to do is grow people, and grow people in Scripture, grow people in understanding Jesus, and grow people in following Him. And if that's just not enough for us, then I think we need to question whether or not we really should be in ministry, or we should maybe be in our own business of coaching or consulting or something like that. Because discipleship is really at the core of who we are as pastors. And if we're not doing that, if we're not okay with just doing that, then there's something off in how we're approaching ministry. And as we look across the landscape of church and Christianity, at least in the United States, as we look across, it's clear that people aren't being discipled. They're not being discipled well, and they're almost not being discipled at all in some regards. We have to get back to that. We have to get back to discipling men and women into relationship with Jesus. We have to get back to discipling children at an early age. We have to get back to discipling teens and young adults in a way that sustains them through the course of their lives. We have to get back to discipleship. And if we need a vision, discipleship is it. If you need a vision to lead in your church, then have a vision for the discipleship of your church, not for the building, not for the parking lot, not for the next ministry, not for the outreach to the community. Have a vision for discipleship and let everything else feed into that. That's the second perilous path. The third, and probably the most predominant for most of us, is the Lone Ranger pastor. I know for me, there was certainly a time where I liked to just do my own thing. You give me a job, let me do it. Sure, I didn't mind working with other people, but really honestly, I could do it better than most of the people that were around me. I just wanted to get it done. And so I just did it until I was in a ministry where I wasn't enough. I couldn't do it all. I couldn't get it there. I remember, when I was on staff, developing a leadership school for pastors and ministry leaders. And my responsibility was to create the culture around the school, was to transition from one culture to another culture and build a community life around it. And 1 year in, it was clear this job was bigger than me. I wasn't going to be able to do it myself. And I needed help. I needed to trust other people. I needed to get delegate. I needed to train. I needed to build a team around me. And now, today, almost 15 years later, I miss having a team. What I do now is solo. I do it all by myself. I have a few people that help me here and there, but I don't have a team that I get to hang out with and work alongside and all of that. I'm doing it on my own, and I miss having that team. I don't want to go solo. But I understand what it means to do that and to have almost that desire and need to. Many of us, and I know this was somewhat in my case, we just want to control things. And when we say it, we don't really articulate it that way. We say things like, I just want it to be excellent, or I just want it to be done right, or I can just do it faster, or I can just do it better. And that all may be true. But here's the thing, if you're always doing it, then nobody ever learns how to do it. And there are people who can do things that you do better than you if you just take the time to train them and develop them and let them do it. Because the reality is we are burning out across the board as pastors. We are running out of resources. We are running out of energy. We are running out of time. We have a whole generation of pastors who are starting to exit. They're starting to retire. And unfortunately, we don't have enough pastors who are coming along behind them to fill their spots. And a lot of that is because not enough training and developing was happening. We have too many Lone Ranger pastors who have served for 40 and 50 years and have nobody to follow them now. And as they exit and retire, nobody is in the back ready to step in. And unfortunately, the generations behind them are doing the same thing. We're serving in isolation. We're serving as Lone Rangers. We are going alone and doing our own thing. And we don't have enough pastors on the wings, enough pastors being trained, enough pastors stepping in to fill the spots that are being vacated. And I would encourage you right now, today, make the decision. I'm going to start training others. Maybe you just start with lay leaders. Train up your volunteers and train them to be better than just a volunteer. Train them to be great pastors of their people, pastors of their communities, pastors in their homes. Train people up. And along the way, you'll find people who feel called to full-time ministry that you can then train up into your staff or send them off as a church plant or in another position at another church. We need more pastors at every level. And we need more pastors who are willing to not be Lone Rangers and willing to train and develop others. It is a vital, vital need right now. And I believe that we are at a crux right now. We are at a crossroads. And then the next 5 to 10 years, if we don't fix some of these issues, then we're going to see a huge decline in the church in the next decade or two, because we just won't have enough pastors to carry the load. And so if you feel like you are a Lone Ranger pastor right now, then you need to figure out a way to break that. Figure out a way to start training others. Figure out a way to develop more people. Figure out a way to reach out and have a community of pastors around you. That's one of the reasons why the Dream Life and Ministry cohort, that's the reason why I've built it, to have a community of people. Because I think too many of us are Lone Rangers who are in desperate need of community. I tell people all the time, God never intended our relationship with Jesus to be done in isolation. It was always meant to be done in community. And I would argue that ministry is the same way. We were never called to serve and be pastors in isolation. We were always called to be a part of a community of other pastors and ministry leaders. Paul always had someone with him, whether he was training them or developing them or whether he was just enjoying their company. He always had somebody with him. And I think that's where all of us are. We need to be surrounded by others who are walking in this path of ministry with us. And so that's it. Those are the three perilous paths that Tom Nelson shares in his book, The Flourishing Pastor. My question for you is, where do you find yourself? Are you on any of these paths? And I get it. Most likely your initial reaction is, no, there's no way I'm a celebrity pastor. No, there's no way that I am jumping from vision to vision to vision. There's no way I'm a lone ranger. But let's just pause and let's take time to really think through that. Pay attention to how people are responding to you. Pay attention to how you're approaching your ministry day to day. Pay attention to things going on around you. Lift your head and look at the horizon and ask the question, if I stay on this path and I keep going this way, where is it going to take me? And if it's not taking you to a healthy place, if it's not taking you to a place where you live a fulfilling, satisfying lifestyle, where you have time for you as well as time for the church, then that's a dangerous path to be on, and you need to find a way off. You need to figure out a community of pastors around you. You need to figure out, put in accountability systems. You need to create a way for you to be okay with just having a vision for discipleship and reaching people and loving people and developing them. Whatever you need to do. Because the last thing that we need as a collective body is for you to become a statistic because you're on a perilous path and you didn't do something about it. We need you in ministry. We need you serving your people and loving your people and showing them the gospel and bringing them into relationship with Jesus. We need you. We can't afford to lose you. And so we need to figure out a way to stay in there together and to help each other. All right? And so my prayer today is that you look at these three paths, be honest, take it to prayer, spend time with God, and ask him, am I on one of these paths? And if so, what do I need to do to get out of it? Because we don't want to lose you along the way. Okay? Again, if you're interested in the Dream Life and Ministry cohort, I would encourage you, go to brandonpartycooper.com/mydreamlife. Check it out. Look at all the bonuses. Look at everything there is. Look at the community that we're building. Consider being a part. It's very low risk and a lot of reward if you are a part of it. Okay? So go brandonpartycooper.com/mydreamlife. Check it out. You have a few more days to enter in before the doors close, a few more days before that founder's price goes away. And so please check it out. Alrighty? Hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next episode.